Talk a little bit about that and how it helped you and how you wound up on offense.
Yeah, well, I played at a Division III school at the University of Rochester. I was a free safety, believe it or not. You can't tell by the build right now, but and then I had the opportunity to go to William and Mary down in Virginia, and didn't get paid, but a guy by the name of Russ Huseman, was the defensive coordinator, and that's how I got my foot in the door, meeting him and interviewing with him, and then stayed there for the season, and then sent about a bunch of letters out, and went to Banks School at Michigan State, worked for Coach Saban for 2 years, again on the defensive side of the ball, and he had just left the year I think we went 10-2. I think it was 10-2. Beat Florida in the Gator Bowl, but Citrus Bowl, should I say. Nick went to LSU, and I had, a decision to make, go down and be a graduate assistant at LSU on defense again. And I was really trying to get into the NFL, and that's when Belichick got the job at New England. So I went and interviewed there. Nick got me in contact with Bill. The interview was a long process. I interviewed with, I don't know how many other guys that interviewed for the position. There were a lot of them. Ended up, fortunately, getting that job. And then I was on defense there. And, Nick and Bill had worked together. Nick was Bill's defensive coordinator. So there was some similarities with being a graduate assistant for Nick and the playbook and the things that, they did there at Spartyville. Stayed there, did that for a year, and then did it again for another year. Got a chance to work with the safeties a little bit more than just, breaking down film and things like that. And, there was try to do the best job I could. There was a coach on our staff beginning of that season. God rest his soul. He was here too. Dick Rabine was a quarterback coach, and he passed away during camp. So we never hired another coach on the offensive side of the ball. And at the end of that year, after the Super Bowl, there was a spot that was going to be created in receivers, and Ivan Fears was going to move the running backs, and Bill promoted me. So there was a lot to learn. Charlie Weiss really helped me out a lot with learning the offense that we ran there, and Ivan Fears, who was running back coach, Dante Scarnacchi, an offensive line coach. Just as a young coach that was on defense for 5 years and trying to learn the system and learn techniques of receivers. I'd say the other guys that helped me were the veteran receivers. Troy Brown, who's there right now, that works with the receivers, and David Patton, who, God rest his soul, passed away in a motorcycle accident this past summer. Great friends of mine. But they were, you can learn a lot from players. There's it's a business that's full of egos. And I think that, you just take a step back and you can learn from a lot of different people, a lot of different things. And, I'm thankful every day for those veterans of Troy Brown and David Patton, along with the offensive staff at New England and obviously Coach Belichick, who gave me that opportunity, to have my first chance of coaching a position.
Coach, as the league has evolved, what has shaped your offensive philosophy? Because you've been a part of, some pretty dynamic offenses, not only at New England, but when you were calling the plays yourself, being a safety, being on the defensive end, obviously you knew some of the fault lines in defense in the way that the league is set up now to play. But were there any other influences in your style of philosophy?
Yeah, it's a great question. As a young coach, you kind of learn one way to do it. And, I thought, offense that we ran at New England for all those years was so conducive to Tom and the rest of the players. And Charlie did such a good job. And, it is a pretty expansive playbook. So then I went, and when I became a coordinator, I kind of just used that offense, if you will. And things that I've learned in the past is you really got to do a good job of trying to adjust to the players. So every year I try to tinker with different things, but I'd say the one interesting place that I went was Alabama, and got to coach there for a year and really learn a lot about some different aspects of the games that weren't really prevalent in the NFL. during the time I was in there. And I think that's just the way football is going. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, heck, when you played, you're not running the quarterback a whole bunch. But I think there's different ways. You got to be smart about it. But the RPO game, the quarterback run game, if your quarterback can do it, and if you can't do it, then you don't do it. But that just adds another element. So when I got to Buffalo and we had drafted Josh, this offense, I just didn't take an offense and put it together. I had all these places that I've been. It was a work in progress. The first year, Josh played, I think, 11 games, something like that. But, we grew comfortable with each other on the field, giving them the play, but also off the field. He's just a great friend of mine. He offered a lot of stuff that he liked or didn't like. And as we grew each year, we evolved the offense to suit, Josh, to be honest with you. And we also added pieces, Carl, like, Diggs and Cole Beasley and Smoke and Emmanuel Sanders, and drafted, Gabe Davis, and had Isaiah McKenzie and Dawson Knox and Devin Singletary in the line. So, just to, it takes a little while, to get it to where exactly you need to have it. It just doesn't happen overnight. There was a lot of trial. There were a lot of errors. But each year we kind of grew it, together, all of us, the players, the coaches, the assistant coaches, myself, the head coach. And, we're just at the beginning stages now of trying to figure out what works best for the Giants, most importantly.
One of the things, Coach, that you're great at is team building, and not just team, but within the organization. Carl, I know you could attest to this. I mean, you're around, you're visiting with different people within the building. I mean, half the time in the morning, you got your wife, Beth, on, who's very important. You got her on FaceTime, and you're talking. Why is that so important to you, to be human?
Well, I think everyone is responsible for something in the organization. Everybody has a job to do, and everybody's job is important. And I think you should recognize that, but not just as a professional, not just, because they're the vice president of marketing or the head equipment person or the trainer. It's because, people are what makes this business go, from all aspects, from, again, media department, strength staff, assistants, scouting staff. I think, I'm just a person that grew up, was raised by two grandparents that, I try to do the right thing. They instilled it in me a long time ago, and, treat people the right way and making sure you make them feel important is just something that was instilled in me at a young age from those two old hats.
And Coach, when you talk about making people feel human, and there's a trust element to that. And if we could tie that back to the guys that you're directly responsible for on the field, you got rookies playing this first game, right?
Yep.
Can you talk about the element of trust and maturity that a guy like Evan Neal or Rondell Robinson has, that, number one, the reciprocal trust, and the fact that you feel so comfortable that it's not necessarily a necessity, because if they're not ready to go, you're not going to put them in. But you got, those two guys are going to be major parts of your career moving forward, God willing.
Yeah, I think that really starts back with the process of evaluating these players. And it starts with Joe and the scouting staff of getting the information that they get when they initially start to look at these players, and making sure they have the right, DNA, so to speak, for our Giant culture. And, then they give the information to the coaches, and you go through that whole process that takes a while, from, February at the combine, and March and April, and the Zoom calls that you have with them. And you try to dig deep and figure out, what makes those players tick, both as players and as people, and make sure they're the right kind of people that you want to have in the organization. And, I credit Joe and the scouting staff for all the work that they did leading up to the draft, and then in the selections of the draft. When you have good young players that have talent, but also have the right mindset, that are, I'd say mature beyond their years, if you will, they're going to have some hiccups here and there. We're all going to have them, starting with me, probably most. But they're the right kind of people that come to work every day, that love the game of football, that treat people the right way, that love to practice, that just have the right DNA for what we're trying to do.
And I intentionally didn't mention Kayvon Thibodeau because I think there's another set of pressures, if you will, of a guy like him, because he's coming into a place, he's a highly touted draft choice. Have there been conversations on the expectations of him having to manage being the top player in the draft, being looked at as, the cornerstone of this defense? Have you guys had any conversations on how he should approach that, or he has taken it off?
He's really come in just like all the other guys. We did all our work on Wandell, Evan, Kayvon, and they've been really good, just off the field, how they are in the meeting rooms, how they are with Ashley Lynn in the rookie meetings. Again, I think they've leaned on some of the veteran guys, Dexter and Leo and Shep and Saquon and Daniel, and they've done a good job of really just keeping their head down and trying to get better. And Kayvon's a very humble person in this building, and he knows he's got a lot to learn. I'm sure he knows he has talent. I mean, everybody can see he has talent, but he knows that talent alone doesn't get it done in this league. And he knows he hasn't played any, he's played a little bit of a preseason. So I think his approach and how he's handling things, just like all the rookies. And again, I'll give, Ashley, she deals with those guys a lot, those rookies. Being a pro off the field and in the building really lends yourself to putting your best foot forward on the field.